You guys have been asking us to review this, and so that's what we're gonna do in today's video. What's up, guys? I am on the Onewheel GTS, and Andrew is on the Floatwheel ADV Pro.
Okay, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Floatwheel, let me explain. The Floatwheel is a VESC-based one-wheel copycat that comes from overseas. It incorporates a lot of third-party modifications into its design and costs significantly less than the comparable versions of the official Onewheel. But the Floatwheel has a few strings attached, and we'll cover that in a bit. The Floatwheel comes in two main trims, the ADV and the ADV Pro. The biggest difference between the two used to be that the ADV Pro came with a bigger battery giving you 2 more miles of range. However, at the time of editing this video, because of supply chain issues, the standard Floatwheel ADV is only available with the upgraded Pro battery, so the batteries between the two trims are identical for now. In short, the ADV and the ADV Pro are basically the same product, except the ADV comes with thinner rails while the Pro comes with chunkier rails, both with the ability to raise or lower your center of gravity. All this is to say that we are riding and testing the Floatwheel ADV with the upgraded Pro battery and with standard rails, which I actually prefer over the Pro rails for the look.
So let's get riding. The Onewheel is how our YouTube channel started. And today it's great to get back on the Onewheel, go back to the roots. And in this video, we're gonna talk about the whole purchase, assembly, ride experience of the Floatwheel. If you're looking for incredible ride footage on the Floatwheel, check out the Float Life's channel. If you're looking for someone that's getting into the nitty gritty and mechanics and engineering details, check out Mario Contino's channel, The Board Garage. What we're gonna offer you today is two guys that like to ride and what we think about the Floatwheel, and most importantly, do we think it's worth it? So we're gonna start from the beginning, talk about the experience with purchasing and ordering a Floatwheel, receiving your Floatwheel, and getting it assembled and set up.
Full disclosure, Tony at Floatwheel sent us the wheel to test and review, but if you do go to buy this, you're gonna have to buy this with cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It's a little bit off-putting for some people, but I have never seen anybody have issues with receiving their Floatwheel. It is shipped in 3 separate boxes and takes about a month to get to you.
It's almost like a DIY kit. You've got your motor and tire in one box, you've got the board and battery in another box, and then you have the charger in a separate box.
And assembly should have been a breeze. I think I could have done this in under 30 minutes. The problem for me was there was a little bit of screw taps that were misaligned. So I was able to get them aligned. It just took a lot of finagling, but I just wish there was a little bit better quality control on that. The other thing is that when I was screwing together the board, there was little pieces of plastic breaking on like the fenders and the bumpers. However, they did realize that this was an issue with production and they sent everybody replacements. So I do commend them for doing the right thing, noticing the problem and not waiting for customers to reach out to them to send them replacement parts. And there was one obnoxious thing that I had to deal with programming the wheel. I looked at the Floatwheel YouTube channel to look at the programming guide, programmed it, took me about 45 minutes because the video was pretty slow. So the wheel the first time worked terribly. It didn't have the right balancing. And then I ended up emailing Floatwheel and found out that I had the wrong programming steps because this was the newer version. Once I got the new video, it took me about 30 minutes to program it, and then it's worked rock solid ever since. But once you get a hang of it, you can program all sorts of different things. So that's the one thing that I do like about the Floatwheel. I can adjust the way it rides. It's basically like the Onewheel app on steroids.
It's so customizable. If you've seen anyone that's had a Onewheel looking device just standing straight in the air, self-balanced, that's because of VESC. If you've seen someone flip their Onewheel upside down and ride it upside down, that's because of VESC. The thing is, it's also going to take a little bit of homework and a little bit of tinkering. You're going to want to be able to be the type of person that likes to play around with settings so that you can get it just right.
The customization is amazing, however, there is some downfalls to it. You have to be careful because it can lead to a dangerous situation. We'll talk about that more when we get to things that we don't like.
Let's go and ride somewhere where we can talk about the wheel and do a walkthrough of this Floatwheel ADV Pro.
So yeah, the Floatwheel looks pretty much just like a Onewheel. It's got a mag handle on the side. It does have two handles to grab it onto, the front one and a rear one, but they're pretty small. This is one thing that I wish Tony would have stole from Onewheel, was making bigger cutouts for these handles. Compared to right here, this is nice and big. My hand fits in there comfortably, and it's got some curvature to where it's easier to grip. These are pretty much just straight up and down, so my fingers go in and they can't bend, as you can see. One thing I like about this foot pad is it is similar to the Onewheel where you have to touch both sides to activate it, but the sensor is a lot more sensitive than the Onewheel's foot pad sensor. A lot of times you have it where you jump on the Onewheel, the GT or the GTS, and the board doesn't engage and it just kind of slaps itself to the ground. I've never had issues where I jump on this board and try to take off. It always engages every single time.
And so I wonder if the insensitivity of the Onewheel GT and GTS's foot pad has to do with all the problems they had with their foot pads being overly sensitive. I haven't heard of any reports of ghosting on the Floatwheel. It's a finer grip tape on the Floatwheel, more coarse on the GT.
We have a very similar light sensor in the front. So when I look at the Floatwheel, I can instantly see that I'm at 60% battery. When I look at the Onewheel GTS, I can see I'm probably around like 80–70%. It's not as clear and easy to read exactly what battery level I'm at. The motor itself is different as well. There's a big hole in the center of it. That was one of the most unique things that I saw on this wheel, was how big that motor hole was. You can get the Floatwheel to higher top speeds, and it's actually a lower voltage than the GTS. I feel like there's just more safety margins on the Onewheel, where the Floatwheel allows you to reach its full potential.
And top speed isn't all about motor size and battery size and power. It's also about the software, the firmware that's running it.
It's a little nerve-wracking going faster on these, but I do like that you have the ability to turn it up if you're a risk taker. One other thing about the motor hub is that it's got adjustable height settings, so you can drop the motor and wheel lower, or you can raise it up. So I do like that you have that adjustability where you don't have that on the Onewheel GTS.
And that also, the adjustability with the height, something that they took from the community and incorporated it into this product.
One other thing that was taken from the community is this tire. The tire is inspired by the Enduro. As you can see, it looks just like the same tread, same type of design, but this does not have as soft as compound as the Enduro tire, and it's a little bit more boxy. Overall, I really like the tire. I've had zero issues with it, and I don't really feel like I need to exchange this out for a different tire just yet. It does come with these little type of fenders that are pretty good at keeping the small pebbles out of your shoes, but is pretty worthless at keeping you dry from the wet conditions. Moving on to these rails, there's two different types of rails that you can choose between. The rails that we got kind of remind me of the mustache rails from the Mob Shop. One other feature that they've introduced onto the ADV Pro is that there's two battery packs. There's the big battery pack in the rear, and in the front has a smaller battery pack. There's also a VESC controller, which is technically sine wave, and you have to use the VESC tool to control all the different functions of the wheel. Overall, very similar design, but there is some big differences. Completely different motor from the Onewheel, completely different controller, and battery packs that are built on both sides. And to me, the foot pad is also better.
From a distance, they look almost identical, and when you ride them, they feel pretty similar depending on how you have your Floatwheel tuned. There are the key differences like Andrew has pointed out. The charge port on this is very simple.
It's just a little bitty hole.
Charge ports on the Onewheels have become more simple. Here you still can see it's got the 3 pins in there. And then lastly, we've talked about some of the plastic issues which Floatwheel has resolved. The other issue that we had is some of the fit and finish. On some areas the bolts are flush and they go in all the way. Yep. But in other areas couldn't quite get the bolt to go sit flush like we'd like.
But this is where I was referring to the screw tap holes. I could not get this to go flush. The bolts that mount the motor to the rails, I was having issues with getting all four to line up.
But all together, once it's put together, it rides great. The most important part of the Floatwheel is the ride. How does it stack up to the Onewheel, and what do you think about the ride? To me, the Floatwheel is the best Onewheel clone. It looks just like a Onewheel, and it actually rides just like a Onewheel.
The ride feel is excellent. This is the closest thing that I've ever felt to a true Onewheel. We've ridden the Trotter in the past. That was horrific.
Oh.
Trying to let up. Whoa. where this is ultra smooth and feels identical to a Onewheel. Sounds a little bit different, has more torque than the Onewheel, and even possibly the Onewheel GTS. But if you had me blindfolded, I couldn't even tell the difference between both of them.
The folks over at Floatwheel, they've done a good job at making a product that for Onewheel fans, they're going to enjoy. We're gonna go to our next stop and talk about the things that we love best about this Floatwheel ADV Pro. As someone who's budget conscious, the Onewheel, it's expensive. And if you're looking for a budget-friendly option, could the Floatwheel be it? Well, at $1,800, you're getting a device that looks and feels and rides just like a Onewheel, so you're certainly saving quite a bit of money.
Overall, the biggest huge reason of why you want to buy a Floatwheel is because of the right to repair. It's huge for people who live in other countries, because overall, if you buy a Onewheel in Australia, in Europe, if anything happens to it, you got to ship it all the way back to California and Santa Cruz. And that's a big, huge issue for a lot of people, where the Floatwheel, you can just find out what part's broken, order it up from them, and they'll ship it directly to you. This doesn't mean that everybody can fix this wheel. You still need a little bit of knowledge of how to repair and tinker with things.
Data nerds, data junkies who love to just customize things just how they like it will love the VESC app and the ability to finely tune your ride to just how you like. And it's supported by a huge community that's working hard to always improve the wheel.
The foot pad is ultra sensitive and it's easy to engage. Zero issues with mounting it and just taking off on the wheel. The tire tread itself, for a stock tire, it's pretty rock solid, especially at the $1,800 price point. You can adjust the height of the motor on the rails. So I do love that I don't have to spend $400 for additional rails if I was to want to change the height with the GT or GTS.
Now let's ride to our next stop and talk about the cons and the things that we feel like could be improved with this device. All right, let's talk about the things that we don't like about the Floatwheel. Starting off from the whole process.
The biggest problem for most people is that they're going to be going to a Russian website and purchasing the wheel with cryptocurrency. So that's a huge hurdle for some people. Some people have never used cryptocurrency, some people don't know how to use it, and some people don't trust it. If you're wanting some instant gratification, you're gonna have to wait a month for this to come to you, where Onewheel can come to you within 2 to 3 days. Not only does it take 1 month to get to you, you're gonna have to spend at least a couple hours to get this working and operating. Some people may be able to shave it to 1 hour, but most people it will take 2 hours to get it assembled and programmed, where the Onewheel works right out of the box.
So with the Floatwheel, there definitely is assembly required and setup required.
Another big issue that I see with the wheel is that if you program it incorrectly, it could lead to a very dangerous situation if the voltage cutoff is set incorrectly. It might be fully charged, but because you set that voltage cutoff incorrect, it may throw you off of the board.
You can't blame a company because you assembled it incorrectly. So realize this is all going to be on you when riding the Floatwheel.
You have the right to repair the wheel, but all the parts are coming from China, so it's still going to be delayed. I would assume that there's going to be some dealers in the US that carry parts and components so you can get them sooner. For right now, normally if you're going to be buying it from Floatwheel, it's going to take a month to receive parts.
This is a very heavy wheel. Carrying this around isn't very easy.
Tony seems to offer excellent customer service. However, there needs to be someone else making his videos. I've grown up with a mom having a very thick Asian accent, but it's going to be hard for most people to follow along with the instructions. And last but not least is from the fit and finish, the water resistance seems to be pretty low. The way the cords go in, you can definitely get some water ingress if you ride this in rainy conditions.
Who we think should get this, number one, and number two, do we think this is worth it?
If you're a Onewheel enthusiast and you're tired of future motion with the right to repair issues, the Floatwheel is a great solution for you. It's also a great solution for people who want the GTS, but they can't afford it. It's at almost half the price and it's very comparable in torque and power.
And I think the person that should get the Floatwheel is someone that's willing to wait, use cryptocurrency, willing to be a tinker and a DIY person that's willing to take the risk, because there is a risk involved with this. Risk number one, you're using cryptocurrency and buying from a Russian website, and you're buying from a company that's being sued and who knows how long they're going to be around. Number two, you're buying a product that you're having to set up yourself, and if you don't do it correctly, that could cause some problems.
But overall, the question is this board worth it? 100% for me. Basically half the prices of the GTS, and you're getting very comparable power and range.
If you want an out-of-the-box experience which is ready to roll, then maybe you should look to the Onewheel. The Floatwheel, though, definitely adds competition to the market, and that's competition that a lot of people say we need to help push the whole movement forward.
If you would like us to make a video following up about the legal lawsuit from Future Motion to Floatwheel, let us know in the comments and give us a thumbs up in the video.
Check out our full written review at freshlycharged.com. Thanks for watching, and when you guys ride, wear your safety gear.